Admiral James Cooper stood at the main viewport of the UES Titan, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The endless sea of stars stretched before him, but his eyes focused on the tactical display, showing hundreds of human warships gathering at Alpha Centauri. Each ship represented thousands of lives under his command, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. 20 years of Grox raids on human colonies had pushed humanity to its breaking point. The memory of New Eden's destruction was still fresh in Cooper's mind. He had been a young captain then, forced to watch helplessly as the Grox ships descended on the peaceful farming colony. The bioweapons they used had turned the fertile plains into wasteland in mere hours. 10,000 colonists died that day, including Cooper's brother and his family. "Admiral, the last battle group has arrived," announced Commander David Wilson, his tactical officer. The young man's face glowed in the blue light of his holographic display. "Fleet strength is now at full capacity." Cooper nodded slowly. "Show me the intelligence report again." The air in front of him filled with images of the Grox Stronghold, a massive structure carved into an asteroid larger than Earth's moon. Human spies had paid with their lives to get this information. The fortress housed the Grox's primary cloning facilities, the heart of their military might. "Their defenses are unlike anything we've faced before," Wilson continued, pointing to the layers of energy shields and weapon platforms surrounding the asteroid. "But our new quantum torpedoes should be able to punch through their outer defenses." Cooper walked to the tactical table where a 3D map showed their planned assault. Operation Sledgehammer would be the largest military operation in human history. 500 warships, 300 support vessels, and over 1 million personnel would take part in the attack. "What's the status of the adaptive shield upgrades?" Cooper asked, touching a holographic destroyer to bring up its specifications. "Engineering reports 93% of the fleet has been fitted with the new systems," Wilson replied. "The shields can now learn and adapt to Grox weapons within seconds of first contact." Cooper allowed himself a small smile. The Grox had always seen humans as primitive beings, barely worth noting except as targets for raids. They didn't expect humanity to reverse engineer their biotech and improve upon it. Where Grox technology was purely biological, humans had created a hybrid system combining traditional shields with living crystal matrices. The door to the bridge slid open, and Fleet Intelligence Officer Lisa Baker strode in. Her usual calm expression was replaced by urgency. "Admiral, we've intercepted new Grox communications. They're planning another raid, this time on the Palmer Colony." Cooper's jaw tightened. Palmer Colony was home to over 50,000 civilians, including many refugees from previous Grox attacks. He turned to face the tactical display again, studying the gathering fleet. "They think we're still scattered, defending individual colonies," he said quietly. "They don't know we found their stronghold. They don't know we're ready." He straightened his uniform and pressed the fleet-wide communication button. His voice would reach every ship, every soldier, every crew member preparing for battle. "Attention all personnel. This is Admiral Cooper. For 20 years, the Grox have raided our colonies, killed our people, and believed we were too weak to stop them. Today, that changes. In 6 hours, we launch Operation Sledgehammer. The enemy believes humans are primitive beings who can only react to their attacks. They're wrong. We've gathered the largest fleet in human history. We have better technology, stronger weapons, and most importantly, we have something the Grox will never understand: the unbreakable spirit of humanity." He paused, looking at the determined faces of his bridge crew. "Every person in this fleet has lost someone to the Grox. Today, we honor those losses by showing the galaxy that humanity is not just another species to be preyed upon. We are the hunters now." The response was immediate. Across the fleet, crews cheered and battle stations came alive with activity. Operation Sledgehammer was about to begin, and the Grox would never see it coming. Captain Maria Torres walked through the dark corridors of her stealth cruiser, the Shadow of Earth. The ship's special coating absorbed all light, making it nearly invisible both to eyes and sensors. Even the viewports were designed to trap any stray light that might reveal their position. "Status report," she called out as she entered the bridge. Her crew worked in dim red lighting that wouldn't interfere with their stealth systems. "All systems running silent, Captain," replied Lieutenant Jack Reed from his sensor station. "The cloak is holding steady at 99% efficiency." Torres nodded, studying the tactical display showing the massive human fleet spread out before them. The shadow of Earth would play a crucial role in Operation Sledgehammer. They would slip past the Grox defenses and disable their early warning systems. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Cooper," announced her communications officer. "Priority 1. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen. "Captain Torres, the Grox just hit another colony. Palmer's gone." His voice was heavy with anger. "We're moving up the timeline. Your team goes in 3 hours." Torres felt her hands tighten into fists. "Understood, sir. We won't fail." As she prepared her crew for the mission, Torres remembered the briefing about Grox technology. Unlike human ships built of metal and circuits, Grox vessels were grown, not built. They used living tissue and nerve clusters instead of computers and engines. This made them incredibly hard to destroy, unless you knew exactly where to hit. "All hands, battle stations," Torres ordered. Her crew of 50 was small compared to other ships, but they were the best stealth operators in the fleet. "Begin final mission prep." In the fleet's command center aboard the UES Titan, Admiral Cooper met with his senior officers. The holographic table between them showed detailed scans of the Grox Stronghold. "Their outer defenses are biological in nature," explained General Mark Peters, pointing to massive tentacle-like structures surrounding the asteroid. "They react to threats automatically, like an immune system fighting an infection. Which is why stealth is crucial," Cooper added. "Captain Torres and her team will create a gap in their defenses. That's when we strike." A junior officer burst into the room. "Sir, our deep space sensors just picked up something. The Grox are building up their forces. They're gathering a massive fleet." Cooper studied the new data appearing on the display. The Grox were indeed mobilizing, but not to defend. They were preparing for a major attack on human space. They still had no idea that humanity had found their base. "They're getting bolder," Cooper said grimly. "Intel suggests this is twice the size of any raid force they've used before. They mean to hit multiple colonies at once." The room fell silent as the officers realized what this meant. If Operation Sledgehammer failed, humanity would face devastating losses across multiple worlds. Back on the shadow of Earth, Torres finished reviewing the mission parameters with her team. They would need to get within 100 kilometers of the Grox fortress, closer than any human ship had ever managed, to plant their special devices. "Remember," she told her crew, "the Grox think they're superior to us in every way. Their arrogance is our advantage. They don't believe any primitive species could develop stealth technology advanced enough to fool their biological sensors." She brought up an image of the devices they would plant. Small, innocent-looking pods that would attach to the Grox's biological defense system and release a carefully engineered virus. Not to kill, but to blind. For 15 crucial minutes, the defenses would be unable to detect the approaching human fleet. "One shot," Torres said to herself, watching the massive fortress through her viewport. "One shot to end 20 years of terror." The shadow of Earth's engines hummed silently as they prepared to begin their mission. In 3 hours, they would either change the course of the war or die trying. The gathering storm of humanity's revenge was about to break upon the unsuspecting Grox. The first sign of trouble came when 3 Grox patrol ships emerged from behind a small moon. Their bioships looked like giant sea creatures swimming through space, their organic hulls pulsing with strange light. "All ships, hold position," Admiral Cooper ordered through the fleet channel. He hadn't expected to encounter patrols this far out. "Let them pass." But the Grox ships had already spotted the human fleet's advanced scouts. Their response was immediate and aggressive. Biological weapons pods launched from their ships, each one containing deadly spores that could eat through standard hull plating. "Evasive action," shouted Captain Bill Reynolds as his ship, the UES Thunder, became the first target. "Activate adaptive shields." The new shield technology sprang to life, creating a shimmering barrier around the ship. When the spore pods hit, the shields analyzed their composition and adjusted their energy frequency. The deadly spores splashed harmlessly against the barrier. "It works," Reynolds announced to the fleet. "The adaptive shields counter their bioweapons." Cooper watched as more Grox ships arrived. The enemy vessels moved with unnatural grace, their living hulls allowing them to change direction instantly. But human ships had their own advantages. "All forward units, engage at will," Cooper commanded. "Show them what our new quantum torpedoes can do." The UES Thunder fired first. The quantum torpedoes streaked through space, its warhead shifting between dimensions until the moment of impact. The Grox's biological shields, designed to stop normal weapons, couldn't block something that barely existed in normal space. The torpedo phased through their defenses and struck the lead ship's hull. The effect was devastating. The Grox vessel's biological systems went into shock, its living tissues convulsing as the quantum energies disrupted its cellular structure. The ship writhed like a wounded animal before breaking apart. Meanwhile, Captain Torres and the Shadow of Earth used the battle as cover to slip closer to the main fortress. Her stealth systems worked perfectly. The Grox organic sensors, focused on the obvious threat, didn't detect her ship's approach. "We're picking up something strange," Lieutenant Reed reported from his sensor station. "The Grox ships, they're learning." He was right. The surviving patrol ships had begun adapting their tactics. Their biological hulls were changing, growing denser armor plates, and developing new weapon pods. They were evolving in the middle of battle. "Launch fighters," Cooper ordered. The human fleet released swarms of small, agile craft. Unlike the massive capital ships, these fighters could match the Grox ships' maneuverability. The space around them erupted into chaos. Fighters darted between capital ships, quantum torpedoes phased through space, and Grox bioweapons filled the void with deadly spores. It was like nothing anyone had seen before, a battle between mechanical precision and biological fury. "Sir," called out Commander Wilson on the Titan's bridge, "we've lost the UES Brave and UES Guardian. The Grox have adapted some kind of acid weapon that can get through the adaptive shields if they hit the same spot repeatedly." Cooper gritted his teeth. They'd expected losses, but losing 2 destroyers this early wasn't part of the plan. Still, the Grox were paying a higher price. 5 of their ships had already fallen to human weapons. "Keep pressing the attack," he ordered. "Don't let them retreat," and warned the fortress. The battle continued to escalate as more Grox ships arrived. But something was odd about their behavior. The Grox usually fought with perfect coordination, their ships moving like parts of a single organism. These patrol ships seemed confused, their movements less coordinated. "They're cut off," Cooper realized suddenly. "These ships are too far from their hive mind. They can't coordinate properly." It was a crucial weakness, one they hadn't counted on. Without direct contact with their hive mind, the Grox ships fought like individuals rather than a unified force. Against human crews trained to think independently, they were at a disadvantage. "All ships, focus fire on their command ship," Cooper ordered. "Let's show them what happens when they fight humans ship to ship, crew to crew." The battle was far from over, but humanity had drawn first blood. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Shadow of Earth crept closer to its target, carrying the key to humanity's victory. Deep within the Grox Stronghold, the hive mind commander watched the approaching human fleet through thousands of organic sensors. Its massive brain filled an entire chamber, floating in a tank of nutrient fluid. Tendrils of living tissue connected it directly to every Grox ship and defense system. Fascinating, it thought, its mental commands spreading through the neural network. These humans are not behaving like prey anymore. The outer defenses of the stronghold came alive. Massive biological cannons emerged from the asteroid's surface, their weapon pods swelling with deadly spores. Energy barriers made of living plasma formed layers of protection around the fortress. Admiral Cooper stood on the Titan's bridge, watching the fortress reveal its true strength. All ships, Battle Formation Delta, remember your training. Don't bunch up. Don't give them easy targets. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each one approaching from a different angle. Cooper had studied the Grox for years. He knew their biggest weakness was their rigid thinking. They couldn't understand why any species would split their forces instead of attacking as one unified group. First wave, launch attack, Cooper ordered. 100 ships accelerated forward, their engines blazing against the darkness of space. The Grox response was immediate and overwhelming. Waves of living missiles launched from the fortress, each one guided by a piece of the hive mind's consciousness. At the same time, massive tentacles of energy reached out from the defense platforms, trying to grab and crush human ships. But humanity had prepared for this. The human ships released clouds of tiny drones, each one broadcasting conflicting electronic signals. The living missiles, confused by the chaos of signals, started attacking each other instead of their targets. Quantum torpedo barrage, all forward ships, Cooper commanded. Hundreds of torpedoes launched simultaneously, their warheads phasing in and out of normal space. Inside its chamber, the Hivemind commander felt the first real touch of concern. These humans were using technology it had never seen before. The quantum torpedoes were hitting defenses that should have been impenetrable. Impossible, it broadcast to its subordinate minds. Their weapons ignore our superior biological shields. Adapt, evolve, survive. The Grox defenses began to change, their living tissue rapidly evolving new protection. But Cooper had expected this too. Now, Captain Torres, he sent through a secure channel. Hit them with the EMP. The shadow of Earth, hidden near one of the fortress's main sensor clusters, launched its special weapon. The electromagnetic pulse was precisely tuned to the frequency of Grox neural tissue. When it hit, the biological computers controlling the outer defenses went into seizures. Status report. Cooper called out as the blast wave spread through the Grox defenses. Their outer shields are down to 40% strength, Commander Wilson reported. Their biological systems are struggling to recover. Wait, sir, something's happening. The fortress's surface began to ripple and change. The Hivemind commander, enraged by the human success, was taking direct control. The entire asteroid started to transform, its surface becoming one giant living weapon. All ships, fall back to safe distance, Cooper ordered. But before the fleet could retreat, massive tendrils of living metal erupted from the fortress. Each one was miles long and could crush a battleship in seconds. You understand nothing of true power, the Hivemind commander broadcast on all frequencies, speaking directly to the humans for the first time. Its voice was a chorus of millions of minds speaking as one. We are evolution perfected. You are merely food for our growth. Cooper stood firm as he watched the tendrils approaching his fleet. The Grox commander had just made its first mistake. It had revealed itself out of pride and anger. Now they knew exactly where the controlling intelligence was located. All ships, Cooper said calmly, execute Operation Iron Fist. Show them what human evolution looks like. The battle for survival was about to enter its most desperate phase, and neither side was prepared to show mercy. Major Thomas Reed led his team through the pulsing corridors of the Grox Stronghold. The walls around them were alive, made of organic tissue that glowed with a sickly green light. Every step they took made soft squishing sounds beneath their armored boots. Keep those EMF disruptors active, Reed ordered his 20-person strike team. The devices they carried generated electromagnetic fields that confused the Grox's biological sensors. We don't want the walls reporting our position. They had entered the fortress through a maintenance tunnel that Captain Torres's team had discovered. While the main battle raged outside, Their mission was to destroy the Grox cloning facilities from within. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Amy Parker, the team's science officer. Her scanner was picking up strong energy readings. "There's something big through that doorway." The team stacked up beside the organic doorway, which opened and closed like a giant mouth breathing. Reed gave the signal, and they moved in, weapons ready. What they found made even hardened soldiers gasp. The chamber was enormous, filled with transparent tubes stretching from floor to ceiling. Inside each tube floated partially formed Grox warriors, their bodies still growing in the nutrient bath. There were thousands of tubes, maybe tens of thousands. "This is how they replace their losses so quickly," Parker said, studying the nearest tube. "They're not just cloning soldiers. They're speed growing them." But the cloning tubes weren't the worst part. Along the walls were cages made of living tissue, and inside them were captured beings from dozens of species. The prisoners were connected to horrible machines that seemed to grow right out of their bodies. "They're using them as templates," Parker realized, checking her scanner. "The Grox are stealing genetic material from other species to improve their clones." Reed's hands tightened on his rifle. "This ends today. Plant the charges at every support column. We're going to shut this whole operation down." As the team spread out to place explosives, a loud alarm suddenly echoed through the chamber. The walls themselves turned red, pulsing with warning lights. "They've detected us," Reed shouted. "Double time. Get those charges planted." The organic doors at both ends of the chamber sealed shut. Then the floor began to move, living tissue forming into combat forms, Grox warriors growing right out of the ground itself. "Defensive positions," Reed ordered. His team quickly formed a circle, backs to each other. "Remember your training. Their biological armor is tough, but concentrated fire will bring them down." The battle was intense and close. The Grox warriors attacked with inhuman speed, their bodies able to heal minor wounds almost instantly. But Reed's team had trained for this. They used their EMF disruptors to confuse the Grox's biological sensors and fired armor-piercing rounds designed specifically for Grox tissue. "Charges are set," Parker called out between bursts of gunfire. 2 minutes until detonation." Reed looked at the caged aliens, some of whom were watching the battle with desperate hope in their eyes. He couldn't leave them. "Change of plans," he announced. "Parker, get those cages open. Everyone else, covering fire. We're taking these prisoners with us." The team fought their way to each cage, freeing the captured aliens. Some were too weak to move, and the soldiers had to carry them. The Grox kept coming, growing new warriors faster than they could be killed. 1 minute, Parker warned as she helped the wounded alien to its feet. Reed saw more Grox warriors forming from the walls. They were running out of ammunition, and the EMF disruptors were starting to fail. But then he noticed something strange. Some of the freed aliens were fighting back against the Grox, using their own unique abilities to help the human team. "This is why we're different," Reed realized. "The Grox steal from other species. We work together with them." The timer on the charges ticked down as Reed's team and their newly freed allies prepared for their desperate escape attempt. The true strength of humanity wasn't in weapons or technology. It was in their ability to turn enemies into friends, to fight not just for themselves, but for all free species. The hive mind commander's rage filled every communication channel as its fortress shook from internal explosions. Major Reed's team had succeeded. The main cloning facilities were burning. But the Grox leader wasn't finished. It commanded every ship in its fleet to attack, launching thousands of biovessels against the human forces. "Full retreat," Admiral Cooper ordered as the massive wave of Grox ships approached. "Draw them away from the fortress." The human fleet pulled back in perfect formation, their engines burning bright against the darkness. The Grox ships followed, exactly as Cooper had planned. He knew the hive mind's pride wouldn't let it ignore a retreating enemy. "Now, Captain Torres," Cooper sent the coded signal. "Show them what the Shadow of Earth can really do." Torres and her stealth ship had been waiting for this moment. While the Grox chased the main fleet, she piloted the Shadow of Earth straight toward the fortress's now exposed reactor core. The massive biological power source was visible through gaps torn in the fortress's outer shell by the earlier battles. All hands, Torres addressed her crew. It's been an honor serving with you. Launch pods, everyone out. Captain, Lieutenant Reed protested. You can't stay behind alone. The autopilot isn't precise enough. Torres explained calmly. Someone has to fly her in manually. Now go. That's an order. As her crew reluctantly evacuated in survival pods, Torres aimed her ship at the fortress's heart. The Shadow of Earth's special coating had been designed to absorb energy, including the massive amounts of power from a Grox reactor core. The hive mind commander finally realized the humans' true plan, but too late. All ships returned to defend the fortress. It screamed through the neural network. The Grox fleet turned back, but they were too far away. Admiral, Torres called over the comm. Tell my family I did it for Earth. Cooper watched on his tactical display as the Shadow of Earth flew straight into the fortress's wounded side. The ship's energy-absorbing hull began to overload, sucking in more and more power from the reactor core. What is this? The hive mind commander broadcast, its usual confidence replaced by fear. What are you doing? Torres smiled as warning lights filled her bridge. Teaching you about human sacrifice, she replied on all channels. Then she activated her ship's final system, a device designed to release all absorbed energy at once. The explosion was like a new star being born. The Shadow of Earth had absorbed enough power from the reactor to create a blast that ripped through the fortress's biological systems. The hive mind commander screamed as its neural networks overloaded. All ships, attack. Cooper commanded, don't let this sacrifice be in vain. The human fleet turned and charged, catching the confused Grox ships between them and the burning fortress. Without the hive mind's direct control, the Grox vessels fought like animals, all coordination lost. Sir, Commander Wilson reported, the fortress's defenses are down. Major Reed's team reports they've reached a safe distance with the rescued prisoners. Cooper nodded grimly. Launch the final assault. All ships, concentrate fire on the hive mind chamber. Captain Torres gave us our chance. Let's finish this. The combined firepower of the human fleet focused on one point, where scans showed the massive chamber containing the Grox leader. The hive mind commander, its powers weakened by the Shadow of Earth's sacrifice, could no longer maintain control of its forces. You primitives, it broadcast weakly. How can you do this? We are perfect. We are evolution itself. No, Cooper replied as he gave the order to fire. You're just bullies who never learned that strength isn't about perfection. It's about what you're willing to fight for. The final battle for the Grox Stronghold had reached its turning point, bought with the courage of a captain who proved that humanity's greatest weapon was its willingness to sacrifice for others. The Grox fortress burned against the backdrop of space, its once mighty biological structure now breaking apart. Within its ruined halls, the hive mind commander fought its final battle, not against weapons, but against understanding. Why? It asked as human forces breached its inner chamber. We are superior, yet you defeat us. Admiral Cooper stood before the massive brain floating in its tank, Major Reed's team securing the room around him. The hive mind commander's biological form pulsed weakly, its connections to the fortress and fleet severed. Because you never understood what really makes a species strong, Cooper replied. It's not about perfect genes or superior biology. It's about heart, courage, sacrifice. The last tendrils of the hive mind's influence faded as its life support failed. With its death, every Grox ship in the sector went dark, their biological systems shutting down without the central intelligence to guide them. All units report, Cooper called over the fleet channel. The responses came in slowly. Of the 500 warships that started the battle, only 312 remained. The cost had been high, but the victory was complete. 1 week later, Cooper stood on a platform before the gathered remains of the fleet. Behind him, a massive display showed the names of every soldier, sailor, and officer lost in the battle. Captain Torres's name held a special place of honor. "Today, we remember our victory," Cooper began his speech. "But more importantly, we remember those who gave everything to achieve it." The Grox thought they were superior because they could grow new bodies, new ships, new weapons at will. They saw this as strength. But they never understood that true strength comes from here. He placed his hand over his heart. In the front row, Major Reed sat with several of the aliens his team had rescued from the Grox laboratories. They had learned that the Grox had been conducting their raids and experiments for centuries, seeing all other species as merely resources to be harvested for genetic material. The Grox sought perfection through evolution, Cooper continued. But they forgot that the greatest evolutionary advantage isn't physical. It's the ability to work together, to care for others, to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. Captain Torres understood this. Every one of our fallen heroes understood this. He gestured to the rescue aliens. "Today, we have new allies, species who saw humanity stand up to the galaxy's greatest bully and win. Not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we fought for something worth fighting for: freedom, justice, and the right of all species to live without fear." The ceremony concluded with a fly-past of fighters in missing man formation, honoring the fallen. As the gathered crowd began to disperse, Commander Wilson approached Cooper with a datapad. "Sir, you should see this," he said quietly. "We've decoded more of the Grox database. There are other strongholds out there." Cooper looked at the names of those lost in battle, still scrolling on the display. Then he looked at the rescued aliens, now talking and sharing stories with human soldiers. New friendships being formed, new alliances being built. "Then we'll face them together," Cooper replied. The Grox wanted to rule through fear and force. Instead, they united the galaxy against them. Humanity won't stand alone next time. As the sun set on the memorial ceremony, Cooper thought about how far humanity had come. From a scattered group of colonies living in fear of Grox raids, they had become the force that broke the Grox's power. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy that victory doesn't always go to the strongest or most advanced. Sometimes it goes to those who fight with their hearts, as well as their weapons. The stars were a little brighter that night, as if they too were celebrating humanity's triumph. The Grox Stronghold was shattered, but humanity's spirit had emerged stronger than ever, ready for whatever challenges the future might bring.